All right, welcome to podcast 7. In this podcast, we are going to be now shifting our focus to populations. So we have gone from the idea of the biosphere to the biome to the ecosystem to the community, which is a bunch of different species interacting. Now we're going to a population where we are going to look at the interactions within a group that is made up of just one species. For example, the population of gray squirrels that lives around my house. Okay, these guys are going to be interacting with each other, and those interactions are going to be somewhat different in nature from how they might interact with species that are different from themselves. So we're going to look at that. So this is just reminding you, shame I didn't go to the slide when I was just saying this. So we are going from the large to the progressively smaller, and now we are here at the level of the population. How all these different, how all these members of this moose population interact with each other. Okay, all members of a species in a contiguous area, meaning an area where they can get from one place to another and they can interact with each other. Single species. Now, interactions, I should have said within a population, may be very intense because you have all the same kind of animal, all the same species. They are in the same area at the same time, living there, and because they are of the same species, they need the same things. They are going to rely on the same foods, the same types of shelter. They are going to be competing for mates. They're going to be breeding with each other and interacting in many, many ways that are going to pull them in very close association to each other. Okay? Now, population ecology, then, is the branch of biology in which we look at the factors that are going to affect a population. Okay? Goals of the science of population ecology would be to understand the factors that are going to mostly affect population growth or decline. Scientists try to determine general principles, but also try to relate and determine things about specific cases. For example, what is going to cause this particular population of fish in this area to go up or go down, and how much fishery pressures pulling large amounts of the fish out of the population, is that going to make the numbers decline too severely to the point where there's no members of the species left. So this type of biology has some really practical concerns as we, as humans, put pressure on so many different populations around the planet, either because we are feeding off of them like fish, or because we are out competing them for habitat or whatever. So it is a real significant goal in biology today to manage populations and try to keep them stable so that they don't increase too much. For example, if you bring an invasive species in to an area, its population can just explode because it has no natural predators or whatever. Or so that we don't decrease a population too dramatically. Or maybe we want to decrease an invasive population, or maybe we want to increase an endangered species, whatever. Or maybe we just want to maintain a stable population size. So there is lots of different ways that humans may want to try to tinker with populations, and that has some real practical concerns. Now, first of all, when we're talking about populations, it's helpful just to be able to describe them. So there are ways we can describe a population of organisms. We can talk about its range. We can talk about, which is essentially, where does it exist in the world? Its spacing, and by that we usually are talking about how dense it is. You can see this population of penguins is pretty darn dense, whereas this population of zebras has more space in between. or simply the size, the sheer number of organisms in the population. So, range of a population, where it can exist, is often going to have limitation based on geography and other abiotic factors like temperature, rainfall amounts, and so on. Certain species are not going to be able to live where this guy lives, but this guy, can handle that Arctic cold temperature. The amount of food available, which is a biotic factor, predators that are in an area, another biotic factor. So both abiotic and biotic factors can affect how widespread a population's range can be. Also, the available habitat can determine that, and so on. What an animal or plant is adapted for is going to constrain where it can exist. Okay, this guy's got different adaptations than these guys do. Now, there are certain populations that are, of course, at risk. We call those populations endangered. They usually have very severe limitations to their range, and habitat loss caused by humans is a great threat to at-risk populations. They may be hanging on, and as humans further encroach on what limited habitat they have left, it puts them at a great risk. So that's an area of study that's important. All right, now talking about population density and spacing. There are three typical patterns that we see. We see populations in clumped patterns, like little schools of fish. You may see a school here, a school over there. A uniform pattern, which is probably less common for some of us to see, but these penguins have spaced themselves in a very uniform way across this tundra environment. And then a kind of a random spacing pattern where you might have oak trees placed at random points in this forest habitat. Understanding this kind of patterning can help provide insight into how organisms interact socially and what kinds of needs they have in their environment, and so on. So this uniform spacing that we see usually is really determined by the territorial needs. These guys will fend off for their little square foot of turf here. So territoriality is a very direct cause of this kind of spacing, territorial interactions between individuals. The clumped pattern is probably the most common thing we see, where organisms kind of tend to group together, either because the habitat is right or their social interactions dictate that they kind of tend to clump together. And a random pattern, as we see perhaps with these dandelions, is perhaps the least common. Okay, so that was quick and painless. So populations is where we're headed next, and we've got a couple more podcasts to go, but you're almost done. So thanks for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next podcast.